most of us never realise, as we stuff our faces with the sanitised swill of premium content providers, is that there is a wealth of free entertainment just a few clicks away. While it is by no means the be-all and end-all of online video, there are approximately 1.3 billion YouTube users, and 300 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute. In that great cesspit of screaming clickbait, it is easy for films to fall between the cracks, swiftly buried by an eternal stream of effluence. But what of those fallen and forgotten films, swept away and buried beneath the landslide of portly cats, facepalm fails and belligerent reaction videos? Strap on your favourite hazmat suit and join Indy Film Library as we take a deep dive into the internet's most popular video sewer. Journey with us as we rake through the muck, sifting through the turds in the hope of unearthing some diamonds for your viewing pleasure. Welcome to Tube Rats. Hello, and welcome to Tube Rats. I'm your host, Jack Brindelli, Chief Editor of IndyFilmLibrary.com. Today, I'm joined by my faithful manservant, comedian, and insurance salesman, Jimmy Rudiger. Jimmy, how's it going?
As a servant, I could be happier. As an insurance salesman, it's all good. Thanks for asking.
And our extra special guest today, a triple threat. He's a comedian, he's a film buff, he's a podcaster. It's the host of Chewing the Popcorn, Khan Johnson. Greetings and salutations, Khan.
Well, hello. I'd have been called a triple threat before. A simple threat, yeah, often, but not triple. I like that. I'll go with that.
Well, I'm pretty intimidated, to be fair, because obviously this is my first time having a go at this. So the seasoned veteran is here watching in on us.
To be fair, a first time is always nerve-wracking, but I just relax, go with it, and don't worry if it finishes too soon.
It sounds like my first time.
And I think you've been with quite a lot of my first times, to be fair, at this point. So I'm pretty okay with it.
Okay, well, I feel like that kind of sources the ideal point to lead off on our first film in that case. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 short films that we found on YouTube that were released within the last 4 months. And the first one is to be introduced by, was it you, Khan, actually? Sorry.
Don't know, which is the first one? The Red Room?
It's The Red Room.
That's me, yep.
Okay, I've balls that up, but
no, that's fine.
That's fine. Everyone will enjoy a good balls up. It's okay.
Yeah, keep that in. Keep that in. Make it happen.
Okay.
Brilliant.
You're a repeater.
Gentlemen, I'm sure you need no reminding of the rules, but they're simple. A game of poker where the winner walks away with his life and 600,000 pounds. However, if you lose, you die.
The Red Room. When we got the list of films to look at, I am, if nothing if not a diligent researcher of my art. So I looked at the list and thought, oh, I must look at that. And then yesterday, I remembered the list existed, so I went and had a quick look again. And today, I actually watched 2 of them, and that's when I picked The Red Room. I went with it mainly because it's described as an action thriller, and we'll come to that. But it's also listed as a short action film, and it's definitely short. Basically, the story is, and you have to look at YouTube to understand this, because if you watch the film, you don't know this. The main character, Saul, has debts and family problems and finds himself in a situation where he has no other option but to take part in an underground poker game where it's a winner takes all 600 grand pot. Everyone else gets killed. So I think we can safely say the stakes are high, and the premise is a good one. It's a classic one. It's not like it hasn't been done before. And it's about, I think it came in about 20, 25 minutes long, which was about spot on. It didn't overstay its welcome. It did its job, and it was absolutely, well, it happened. I think
It sounds like it overstayed its welcome,
no,
to be honest.
no, this is the weird thing. I watched it and I thoroughly enjoyed it, but part of my brain was going, this guy wants to be Tarantino. He's seen several Tarantino films. All he wants to be is Tarantino. And now he's trying to be Tarantino's influences. And that kind of wedded in a bit. And the biggest problem you have with it is if you don't read, because hey, Muggins here didn't, the YouTube description, you have no idea that the lead character is called Saul, that he has problems and family issues and debts, and this is why he's doing the game. If you watch it not knowing that, you will actually think he's been sent to the game to go and take someone out.
It's fair to say you wouldn't receive this well in a cinema then.
Unless you'd seen several trailers and the reviews first, you would struggle. It has to be said. But I will to give it its plus points. The lead actor is a guy called Kieran Sarkozy. Now, you may know of him as a presenter of Barber Lounge TV. There's a show you need to catch. And also a fine amateur boxer. Now, there is another problem here. I will come to the good bits, I promise. In much the same way as no gangster from Norfolk has ever been depicted on screen because you don't sound threatening with a Norfolk accent.
I know where this is going, yeah.
Yeah. The Southwest accent, with the best will in the world, is a lovely country burr. But you can't threaten people with it because people just assume you're going to give them an apple.
We briefly discussed this yesterday, me and Jimmy, and for all the best intentions in the world, the guy is he's not intimidating, is he? I mean, he's a kind of doing a Vicky Pollard impression almost.
Yeah, definitely. Now, if you watch The Red Room and then you go and watch Barbershop TV, you understand why the guy's not threatening, because you would quite happily have the guy from The Red Room hovering around your head with a pair of scissors. And that's not what you want from a man who's gone to claim all the money and be double-crossed and undouble-crossed and kill everyone in a short film.
I don't suppose you've seen any of his boxing exploits, have you?
I unfortunately I didn't do that much research as I was trying to do some proper work at the same time. Not that I left this late or anything, you know. And it was, on the plus side, on the positives, the soundtrack is a thing of beauty. They have gone with some absolute cracking 60s soul music, and it's beautiful. And there is a scene with a lot of gunfire where they cut the sound and they just overlay the song over the top, and it works beautifully. And it's called The Red Room because, and I don't think this is a spoiler, the room is entirely bathed in red light, and it does create a lovely tense environment. Now, they're playing poker. They kind of assume that everyone knows how poker is played or how their particular brand of poker is played. They don't bother explaining it. You also never see the cards, so you don't actually know or get any sense of tension and drama as to who's got a good hand or a bad hand until someone gets taken out.
Now, actually, I have a question about that for Jimmy.
Oh, yeah.
When you first saw the man who used to star in the Mr. Muscle commercials from the 1990s, did you expect that he would last long?
I mean, I'm going to be honest, Khan. You've been much nicer about this than I have in my notes. I'm just going to jump straight in because I feel like you've played around it a little bit. My notes read: a combination of former darts players, paper boys, and Turkish barbers gather together for a card game. It wasn't so much a film. It was a collection of shots that the director had imagined, loosely strung together with some music. I don't want to be too harsh because the music was really good. I can see what they were trying to do, but at the same time, there wasn't anything there. There was no narrative. There was no like exposition. I didn't care about any of the characters because I didn't know who they were. Other than, as Jack identified, one of them used to sell bleach in the 90s. I
can't believe I missed that.
I don't
vaguely familiar.
Did you find the fight choreography to be believable?
See, I'm trying to be positive about this because this isn't some Hollywood blockbuster with people who are
No.
supposed to know what they're doing. This is an indie film by a keen filmmaker. And to be fair, I would take slight issue with you there, Jimmy, on the filming aspect in that I think it was very well shot, knowing what it was they were trying to achieve.
So I think it was very well shot. I just feel like it was more of a collection of shots that the director had imagined. I feel like whoever the director was, it
was Ewan French.
Ewan French, who also wrote it.
So I feel like what's happened is that he's imagined all of these shots and he's imagined sort of like all of these things, but he's kind of just forgot how to tie all of these shots together. So he's got these like brilliant shots, very Tarantino-esque. It's, you know, he's clearly sort of like really thought about like what he's trying to like present in those shots, but then there's nothing kind of linking it together. And I feel like he's really like excelled at a few things and then really let himself down on others. And the things that he's kind of overcomplicated things for himself. I
wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, but for me, I felt in terms of shot A to shot B to shot C to shot D, it kind of linked and flowed, and there was no sense of suddenly we'll put that bit in, that bit in. He kind of knew what the story was, and I felt he did kind of get that together and make that work on film. I don't disagree with you on the narrative aspect, because like I said, watching that, and I watched the first bit about 3 times, and I still was no further forward, because if you watch the text message conversation that's relayed on the screen, which is quite a nice touch, it doesn't suggest anything of the actual backstory, so you're still no further forward as to who this guy is. And one of the messages is actually, don't fuck this up, which again kind of reads as if it's someone doing a job for someone else. So there, I think you had the problem. Jack, you mentioned the fight scenes. You meet someone who in a restaurant who is there to serve you food. They're called waitresses as a rule. And you often think, I'm not sure how you got that job because you can barely hold a tray. Now imagine that person with a gun. And that's kind of a girl coming towards the door, supposedly tense, action ready to fire this gun, has clearly never held a gun before. And doesn't really
forgot
know
that
one
literally
from the other.
happened.
Yeah, and she's walking towards the camera in what should be. I'm not even going to get into the whole use of slow motion aspect on this because that just didn't work and was needed to be got rid of quickly. The fact that she's coming there with this gun pointing at you, and you're watching this thinking you've never held that gun, you don't look threatening with it, and I'm not totally sure you know what you're going to do with it when you get there. It just looked like Mrs. Overall had gone rogue.
So can we take a second to appreciate there was one of the henchmen, everybody else was dressed really well, and one of them for some reason was dressed like a butcher. I didn't fully... I really enjoyed it, and there was like no explanation as to why that was. There was just like 2 poker players and a butcher. I loved that, to be honest.
In defense of Ewan French, having tried and failed to make my own independent films, terrible results of which are still also available on YouTube, I've learned that you have to write and rewrite and direct according to the materials that are at your disposal. As wary as I am of disrespecting a boxer who has access to sharp objects, it soon becomes quite apparent why there is so little dialogue in this film the moment people start speaking.
Yes.
So, I mean, the whole opening sequence is basically 5 minutes of uninterrupted soul music while the lead character texts people. And I feel like that was, originally that was a scene where he spoke to someone, and then they got into it and he was like, all right, so I'm in, right? And the director, at that point, it was like, you know, the famous story about Spielberg and Jaws, where he adapts how he's going to make that film when he sees the terrible rubber shark and realizes he has to show this piece of shit as little as possible, otherwise he's going to be a laughingstock. I appreciate that these are amateur actors, come boxers, come barbers,
come bleep salesman.
But you know, yeah, I guess that's where I'm going with that. To be honest, there's no other end to that. I'm just really glad that I don't live in England.
But you're not wrong about the dialogue thing, because there is that opening scene where once you get him having some weird episode in the car, which I initially thought maybe he'd gone dogging. When you get that bit where, well, it was under the Clifton Suspension Bridge. Apparently, that's probably one of the places you can do it. When you've got the table setting, people are setting the tables up and going in and getting checked and sat down, that whole bit I thought was nicely setting up tension and building nicely. And then the big guy comes in with his hench things and you go, okay, but go with it. And then he starts talking, you go, well, no, maybe you shouldn't do that. And then the other person at the table, who isn't a bleed salesman or a boxer come barber.
He was definitely a barber, come on.
He probably was. He probably was in the other. Watch a second episode of Barbershop Quartet, and he's probably in there. And then he delivers a line, and I can't remember what the line was because it was that unmemorable, but it was that clonkingly badly written, as if someone had said, write some gangster dialogue, and you'd never seen a gangster film, but you knew the rough concept. And so it's just vaguely threatening words thrown together to loosely form some sort of cohesive sentence without any sense of how it fitted into the greater whole.
So Guy Ritchie films.
Do you know what? It's almost that bad.
That I think is the greatest compliment you've given this film so far, to be fair. That John French is a better director than Guy Ritchie.
So my cat's a better director than Guy Ritchie.
Well, now we're going downhill again.
So if we were to try and give like a film some like constructive criticism, what would we have done differently, perhaps?
Well, I wouldn't have watched it. No, that's not. That's very harsh and unfair, and I take it back. I do apologise, Mr. Barber Boxer person. That was not nice. Taking on Jack's point about Spielberg and working with what you have, would have possibly actually found a way to minimize all the dialogue as a silent film and make it far more action.
I was thinking exactly that. And then if you were to have dialogue, do you know like those old kind of screen, like old silent movies, they just had like a cut to a black screen with the text on in between, and then people would, something like that.
Well, because I mean, the opening credits were stylistically spot on. With the red and the white and the font, everything was absolutely bang on. So you could have actually just layered that in that style, and it would have looked absolutely mint.
So if this was a silent movie, this could have been passable, is what I'm feeling we're getting to.
Yeah, definitely. And better gunfire.
Yeah, well, if it's silent, I guess you're not going to hear the gunfire, which sounds like a party popper.
Yeah, that would help.
I think you might have a point there, to be honest. And also, if you're doing a silent film, you have this kind of fantastical element to it where almost anything can happen. You have kind of a Buster Keaton vibe. People can fall up the stairs sort of thing. And that would help a lot in explaining why this crime syndicate that has an exclusive gambling room only has this one guy with a gun inside it with like loads of money on the table.
I mean, personally, whenever I go to an illicit gambling den with 600 grand in a suitcase, I only take one guy and a gun because, I'm sure that'll be enough.
I take a butcher, so that's that works.
and Mrs. Overall with a water pistol.
I just put on my thick rimmed spectacles and my nice scrawny suit and my pencil tie, and I look nice and peaceful, and hope that will get me through.
It almost does. It almost does. I was reminded actually, as we were talking, Casino Royale, the proper Bond film, not the spoof. The poker game scene in that is really, really tense because you know what the cards are, you know what the stakes are, you know what the game is. And those are all the things that were missing from that poker game in the Red Room, which was kind of the crucial point of the whole thing. And not knowing what cards anybody had or what the game was, or the only bit he said, I think, all bets are blind. And if you understand poker, then you have no idea what the hell he just said. I scarcely understood what he said anyway. Well, true, yes. I mean, the combine harvester in the background probably was putting you off.
I'm just very much enjoying the idea of going to a poker game at a harvest festival, to be honest. So,
I mean, you both live in Norfolk. It can't be that hard to find that.
I mean, you'd be surprised. Most of the illicit poker games in Norfolk have been clamped down due to COVID. Come the summer, I'm sure we'll be back to normal.
Although, to be fair, in Norfolk, the problem is nearly all illicit poker games are family-based. But yeah, I would recommend watching it purely out of interest. And the guy obviously knows his films, but hopefully this is a stepping stone to more rather than this is what he can do.
Yes, I was just going to ask actually if you guys would recommend it. So, Jimmy?
I'm going to say no, just because I feel like it was a 5-minute movie dragged into a 20-minute kind of short instead. I mean, I appreciate some of the stuff he was trying to do, but I just feel there was so many basics that could have been done better that I'd probably say no for myself.
I think I would have to recommend. Well, I'd deliver it a partial recommendation. I think you should watch it, but I don't think you should watch it alone. A certain kind of film is quite depressing when you watch it alone. When, I knew I was going into this, I was going to get the chance to discuss it with you. That kind of gave it a different thing. But if I just watched that alone, I'd be like, oh God, oh, that's he thought that was good. But in this case, like I kind of, the moment that the main character opens his mouth, I sputtered kind of, and then from there I was on board as kind of like, this is almost ridiculous. It's kind of like watching an old Dolomite film, especially when this pudgy guy starts to kind of throw people about the room and fight choreograph. So yeah, it would be a good addition, I think, to say a kind of so bad it's good movie night.
Yeah, I'd go along with that.
Yeah, I could work with that.
My father used to tell me, the most important things we have are our stories. It's our job to pass them on, to teach and learn from them.
Okay, moving on, with apologies to you in French. Our next film is Brolga, which is directed by Adrian Powers. It was completed in November 2020. In Australia, society has crumbled and gangs of rapacious men roam the country in search of victims. The same is true in Brolga, except this film is set in a post-apocalyptic future. In the deserted forests of Straya, and occasionally in an abandoned shopping mall when the Chernobyl tour guides would allow Adrian Powers to film there, an isolated hermit is forced to offer sanctuary to a young girl as she tries to escape a gang of murderous scavengers that roam the lawless country. What will happen? And how long will it take for somebody to mention a certain combatant of the highway variety?
So for me, this one was everything I didn't like about the first film. I really enjoyed about this one. So the very first shot for this film, off the top of my head, was like a abandoned mall with like the elevators, and it was flooded and there was plants growing over it, and it instantly, just like in one shot, kind of like told you exactly like what the background and what the setting for this film was. It was really, really well shot. Like they used the lighting, like characters coming from the darkness into the light or vice versa. Everything seemed to be like really well thought out. I thought like this one was like everything that I kind of like missed in the Red Room, I feel like was kind of done really well in Brolga.
I'm not sure I can fully agree with you. How does one put this? I agree with you, it was well shot. I have an issue with the use of the word gangs when there are two of them.
Gangs is probably a stretch.
Gangs is a generous term.
For all we know, they were just a loving couple going around the countryside.
Yeah, and you've got to be the unluckiest two victims around that you both end up getting caught by two of the most useless gangs members on the planet, or what's left of the planet. I like the lead character. I like the lead actor. I thought he was very good in capturing the torment's too grand a term, but that conflict of trying to protect himself, but also knowing there was someone who needed help. The bit it starts for me, have either of you guys seen Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia?
I'm afraid not.
I have not, no.
Worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. Director Sam Peckinpah, who is a legendary director, not necessarily for all the right reasons. And he can go off at tangents and you're kind of left wondering what the hell you've just seen. And this film was very much that for me. With The Red Room, I knew what I'd seen. I knew what they set out to do and I knew that they achieved it. Not necessarily to my satisfaction, but they had a start, finish, and an end, and they knew where they were going in the middle. With this, it kind of felt a little bit more like you were saying, Jimmy, about The Red Room, that it was a collection of scenes put together. The final act didn't, for me, gel with the first 2/3 of the film.
No, I get what you mean. I guess it was like a little bit sort of jarring, but I guess that was kind of more like the kind of more violent nature of the final act was more about like the setting. You know, they're sort of like a trying to show the stakes and you know, a kind of life and death struggle. And I definitely get about what you mean about the two sort of like marauding henchmen who had a little bit of like a Home Alone kind of vibe to them, and that they were so bad it was almost comical. I couldn't quite find this woman who was making no attempt to really hide herself for the most part.
Well, no, this is it. I mean, she managed to escape and then just sort of stood 2 feet away going, oh dear, and they couldn't find her. All she needed was a set of marbles and it would have been completely Home Alone 4. I think part of the issue I have with it is I didn't understand the need, narratively speaking, for the Aboriginal mysticism to tell the story of, as you referred to, I don't want to sort of spoil the ending because I think I've really done that with The Red Room. The final act, the unfortunate event, if you will, I don't understand why he needed to tell that story in that way to set up what happened. For me, there would have been a better way for her to stand up for herself.
So my understanding of it was kind of like the theme of the film almost is storytelling and the different ways we tell stories. And like that was kind of shown as well through like the Aboriginal sort of drawings on the walls, and sort of how the stories we tell stay the same, but how we tell them kind of differ from time period to time period.
That makes more sense.
I quite liked, I have to say, the introduction of this kind of motif of the storytelling helping this lead character, who's actually, I think he's credited as the storyteller.
Yes,
he's played by James Saunders, and it's an earnest performance, I think, is probably the best thing I can say about it. His delivery is a little bit stiff, but that's forgivable, I think, because the way that the film is kind of crafted, it clearly has a lot of heart. It feels like, contrary to perhaps the first film, that its heart is kind of in the right place. And the use of the kind of storytelling, it's the mechanism that takes him from this kind of alienated state where he doesn't connect with anybody else, even when they're in need of help. Through him telling this story of the creation of a bird to this young woman, he forges this human connection with her, and that brings him back almost from the dead. And with that, you see like the color comes back into the frame as well, because largely it's all black and white. So I liked it for that. I agree with you about Marv and the other guy. The henchmen were kind of a little bit comical. I think, considering what they were asked to do, I actually thought they were pretty decent again. I think some of it was a little rough around the edges in terms of segueing between the key plot beats. In particular, the fact that this young woman that he's looking to protect, she seems to instantly forgive him for the fact that he did nothing to intervene in the death of her sister. So obviously that, in the kind of 16-minute run time, I think there was more space to explore that.
Yeah, I think I'm enjoying it more now you're talking about it, which would suggest that for me personally, on some level, it didn't quite work, because a lot of the things we're now discussing
Yeah.
weren't immediately apparent as I was watching it. I don't know where there was something. It felt a little bit like there was a misstep, but I was not fully invested in the characters.
I definitely think like with this one, it actually took me longer to watch than the Red Room because I feel like they were trying to do so much, like with the shots, with like I said, with the lighting, using the black and white to kind of show like this grey, bleak world rather than, a very vibrant, colourful Australia. I feel like because they were trying to do so much, it took me longer to watch, and I do feel like you probably like on an initial view, and it probably was quite like there's a lot to miss almost.
Yeah, I'll go along with that. I think of the two, this for me was the more cinematic and more ambitious, without a doubt.
Yeah, 100%.
What do you think about the actual use of? By the way, we talked about some of the imagery that impressed at the start, Jimmy. What did you think about the use of the stuff from Chernobyl? Because it seems quite sporadic in its use. Like it's very at the start, and then it doesn't seem to resurface once we're in just Australia.
I would assume maybe it's trying to sort of like show a message of like the dangers of nuclear power or the dangers of non-renewable energy sources, perhaps, and like what the world could lead to in that instance. But again, it kind of feels like, as Khan was saying, if that was the message, it maybe wasn't that clear.
I think that for me was actually possibly part of the problem with this, because it feels like it took a very sharp left turn from Chernobyl to a cave in some scrubland near Melbourne. I think maybe what he was trying to possibly lay down and set out at the start didn't, for me, gel with what we then got. We could have possibly lost that bit, and I don't think we'd have lost anything major within the context of the main film.
In that case, would either of you recommend this film?
Possibly more than the Red Room.
I would recommend it purely as like it's it was ambitious. It was clearly trying to do a lot, and I feel like if you sort of really sit back and sort of think about it and sort of dwell on it for a bit, I do very much see like what some of your points are about like this. It misses some of the points it's trying to hit and maybe creates a few that it wasn't trying to create. But I would still recommend it.
I think I would give it a tentative recommendation. I agree. It's a long way from being perfect, but there's a lot to like about it. It's quite easy or easier to fall into this kind of production cycle where you go out and you make the quickest, nastiest gangster type film, and you just show a lot of violence and swearing and soul music, and that's cool. It takes a little longer to try or it takes a little more effort to try and craft a narrative with a bit of heart, a bit of something behind it. And Brolga doesn't necessarily get there, but it tries.
A message in a monolith. I've imagined this day so many times. And they are here.
And I think that brings us to our final film in that case. So with the introduction of Laniakea.
I'm gonna go for
Jimmy.
Laniakea, perhaps. I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciation for it. I've discovered that's a Hawaiian word that means open skies or immense skies or the vastness of heaven. So Laniakea is a 5-minute short directed by Dima Taran from sort of late last year. It's about a astronaut and his faithful pet dog journeying alone through space, looking to find some kind of extraterrestrial life or looking to find some kind of answer in the vastness of space. He discovers a monolith or a big, essentially what ends up being like a big ancient tomb And a lot of the film is sort of like these kind of like vast alien planets and shots with sort of weird architecture and sort of like synth music overlaid, and sort of like a one long narrative piece. I think like the first thing to say is like what really impressed me is that this was a one-person project, fully animated, directed, and everything by one person, and I think it was pretty impressive in itself, because it was a big job by the looks of it.
Wow.
Has this person basically done a 5-minute version of 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Yeah, basically.
Is that already a much better film than 2001?
It comes off like the trailer for a film, more than perhaps like a short. I mean, going through the YouTube comments especially, like everyone seems to be almost expecting it to be a sequel or kind of like a larger feature of this rather than for this to be a standalone film. So it is only 5 minutes. And all of the comments like, you have to do part 2, we want to see what the answers are. The film essentially ends with our hero and dog finding this this monolith in the middle of space, and then finding no one alive inside. It reminded me a lot of do you remember that Doctor Who episode Silence in the Library?
Oh yeah,
we
discussed that not long ago on my very podcast,
which you can plug right here.
Let me just jump right in and point out, during the popcorn, we watch Doctor Who episodes and talk over them at the same time. So we create a director's commentary type thing, except it's completely random and rambling and directionless. But we did Silence in the Library, one of the episodes we did recently. You can download it now from iTunes and Google and all the other good places. Thank you.
So that's actually one of my favorite Doctor Who episodes, and it has that kind of feel to it of this massive sort of building and no one being around, and there's kind of like this like overhanging question of like, was it something sinister? Where did everybody go? Was it like monsters? Was it a virus? Is everyone just in stasis waiting for someone to come and wake them up? If I have a couple of nitpicky points, it was all animated by one person, so I don't want to be too harsh on this, but I did notice some of the assets that they used were directly lifted from other sort of IPs, other properties. So I think a few of them were taken from different video games, which either they were included as like an Easter egg or they were just pilfered. I can't really tell, to be honest.
That's the like official way of pilfering, is saying that you're making a reference.
Yeah, there was
Seth MacFarlane does it all the time.
There was some Vulcan writing on the wall. There was a few, like a spaceship I think was taken from like a PC game. I couldn't fairly say if it was stolen or if it was just an Easter egg.
I think they're known as a loving tribute.
Yeah, we'll go for that.
I think I have to tonally differ from you guys a little bit, to be honest, because I watched this for 6 minutes, and about 5 minutes in, I began to wonder if what I was watching was some kind of like practical joke, and the director was going to jump out at me at the end and say, "Ha, you idiot! You made it to the end and nothing happened." But have you seen 2001: A Space Odyssey? What I was going to say about that is, I have seen it, and I think it would make a really good thing to show immediately after 2001 if you've still got the stamina at that point, because you go through that
2 hours building up to nothing.
Almost. I mean, it's 2 hours of extended shots of space stations flipping around and people breathing deeply in space, and then he's suddenly overwhelmed by everything and driven almost insane by the scale of it all, and then going straight into Laniakea, where the ending is just, there's nothing out there, you doofus, this was all a waste of time. I think it's like this kind of poetic punchline that I would love to, as a film programmer, I would like to couple them. but beyond that, I wasn't especially blown away. Like I did think the visuals looked like they'd been directly taken from a video game. So it's nice that apparently he made them all from scratch, but they aren't made from scratch in a way that they look like something that hasn't been done before.
But the interesting thing here is this is the one of the three I didn't get a chance to watch, and I'm regretting that massively now, because after what Jimmy said about it and what you said about it, Jack, I now really want to watch it because I think it actually sounds really good.
I wouldn't go that far. This is again a nitpick, but I just want to like throw this idea out with you. And I've noticed this in a lot of different sci-fi. I know you're quite a big sci-fi fan. So you've got like a lone astronaut flying around space. It's just him and his dog, right? Why is his ship approximately the size of a small city?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. He has to go for a walk occasionally. He can't just sit in a cockpit. He has to go places and do stuff, such as, I don't know, go to the other end and look out the back window. And if he's got a dog, he's got to have places to take the dog for a walk. So he needs long steel corridors for that.
I just feel like if this was a futuristic, massive spaceship, surely like there could have been a more practical use for all of that space, and it couldn't have been. I know this is nitpicking. Also,
what would you have filled it with?
Like a giant bouncy castle if it was up to me. Like one of those big jungle gyms or something.
The Rudiger space program was short-lived.
But fun.
Oh yeah, we all died hilariously.
And the other thing is, so he's got the dog, and again, this is nitpicky, but the dog doesn't have a proper spacesuit. He has a helmet, but he doesn't have like an actual spacesuit.
Are you talking about Martin?
Yeah.
Martin the dog, yeah.
They've gone to the Dima Taran has gone to the trouble of inscribing Martin's name on his collar, but yeah, I agree with you. He's not done a great job of fleshing that out.
Well, I mean, famously, dogs don't need spacesuits. It's a weird evolutionary thing. The vastness of space and gravity and the lack of air pressure actually, their fur creates a bubble around them, so they create their own inherent spacesuit with the fur. Little known fact.
That is a good fact, but
definitely sounds made up. Yeah.
I will raise you that Doug the Pug does not need to dress like Harry Potter to survive, but people have still done that to him.
Fair point. Yes.
This man might have like access to intergalactic space travel, but he's still base parts an idiotic human, and he'll do basic things like this. So,
I mean, inside the spaceship, if you think, go for the obvious ones, the TARDIS, all the various enterprises, no one needs a spacesuit inside the spaceship.
No.
So if the dog doesn't need one, then the human doesn't need one. Was the dog not wearing a spacesuit outside of the spaceship?
No. So my issue with it is the dog has a helmet, but not a spacesuit. So if hypothetically he was in like a horrible atmosphere, his head's fine, but the rest of him's absolutely screwed. It's just a complete fundamental design flaw of like, if you're going to take dogs into space, and the Russians have proven this before, it's not a good idea.
To be fair, yeah, because that was, I think that was Laika, wasn't it? Was the name of that dog? I think, or I've just made that completely because of someone else's band name. That dog
correct.
Had a suit. Am I really? Whoa!
Yeah, it's Laika.
I got a fact wrong.
Someone's job was to create a spacesuit for a dog in sometime in the 50s.
Yes.
Yeah.
So somebody's job now is to create Doug the Pug's outfits. That is.
What is your obsession with Doug the Pug?
I hate him so much.
Apparently, he wants a Doug the Pug short film, but no one's got around to doing it. I think he mentions it often enough on the podcast.
He rejected my script. Son of a bitch.
So
we could have made great things.
So this film, I don't want to say that the director has purchased views to try and boost and to try and get the YouTube algorithm to work in his favor. But I did notice that this has 150,000 views, and none of his other videos have more than about 200.
You know what? I didn't even look at the number of views the other ones got.
I did look at that actually. So Brolga, which won several awards, was on about 6,000 or 7,000 views.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not entirely sure why Laniakea was approximately 20 times more popular.
Do you think that makes the comment section a bit more suspect in that case?
Oh, 100%.
Like maybe a bot might have written these things.
I 100% thought this was botted, to be fair. Yeah, I 100% thought this was botted because like the comments were all really similar and the views were just like way too high considering the rest of the director's videos.
Were all the comments similar to the Tom Gage's "I liked the dog"? Makes sense that man would explore with a dog also in spacesuits.
All of the comments were very positive and very, we must do another one, we must see a sequel, we must do another. They were kind of, they came across as quite like one or two, I believe, but there wasn't one single negative comment and it was like...
So did it read a bit like Tory HQ had sent out a memo and everyone was told what to write?
Oh yeah, 100%. It was like one of those when you see like a Russian bot account or something and there's like 5 different people tweeting the same thing, but they all have a senior friend at the hospital or something like that.
I still think this sounds like a lovely little short cartoon. And frankly, it's going to be a lot more fun than a man in Bristol trying to act tough with some poker chip.
Well, I guess we've got that's one last lesson for the makers of the Red Room is that you need to pay for bots to spam your video, because obviously you've got all these nice little comments in Laniakea about the dog or the fabulous animation, but the top response to the Red Room is someone called MXR Selly, who said, "Sorry, this isn't family friendly at all."
Yeah, I mean, I saw that. I thought, I'm not sure what about any of it said to you it might be family friendly.
But I just point out as well with the Red Room. So obviously, red rum backwards is murder. Red room backwards is mortar. The very southwest way to kill someone.
Oh my god, he committed murder.
Mordor.
Fantastic.
So I take it you're both recommending Laniakea then?
Yes, totally, 100%.
Even though he's not saying that 100%.
Yeah.
It's different. So I feel like I'd recommend it purely because it's probably not like anything else you'll see at the moment. And for a one-person project, it's still impressive. So yeah, I'd recommend.
I would agree. Again, it's a tentative one. I would recommend it to film festival programmers. And you should screen this in one of your selections, and just to see how truthful the pretentious people in the room are. If by the end they're still fucking raving about it and saying "I liked the dog," then you know that you have some snakes in your room. If everyone's like, "Why did you put that pretentious piece of shit where nothing happens in this program?" then you can trust those people.
And again, we have no proof. We have no proof, but
it doesn't sound remotely fair. Let's be honest. Like I'm just being a jerk for the sake of it. Now it was a lovely film. The dog was nice.
Sequel, please.
Sequel, please. Okay. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of our discussion. In that case, I guess it remains for me to thank you both very much for being here today. Have you got anything that you would like to point our listeners towards?
I believe I subtly mentioned the Chewing the Popcorn podcast halfway through Jimmy's bit. I don't think anyone noticed. It was very smoothly slipped into the conversation. But yeah, basically, Chewing the Popcorn is it started off as a film podcast, and it's now, thanks to lockdown, morphed into Doctor Who directionless commentaries, where myself, John Carruthers, and Laura Monmouth talk you through. The idea is you press play when we press play on an episode of Doctor Who with the sound turned down, and so we're talking you through it over the top. So we'll mention things about the show. We'll often forget the show's even on and go off on complete tangents, and basically just take you on a stream of consciousness burble for an hour and a half.
And Jimmy, what are you doing?
obviously I've got my YouTube channel where for the most part I either upload clips of me doing stand-up when that comes back, or I'll be doing parody film trailers and reviews. So you can probably just find that in the description section somewhere.
Of course, it will be in the description, and this will also be posted on the Indy Film Library website, which I have said I'm the chief editor of. Our selection is coming up as well, just to point out. This will probably come out just after we've announced it, but each year we do a kind of film festival where the best films that have been sent in to us for review are shown. And this year it's taking place digitally because of the lockdown still here in Amsterdam. So you'll all have an opportunity to attend and bask in the glorious rays of these splendid films. In the meantime, then, I think thank you to anyone who has ventured thus far and listened to us prattling on. I promise that next time I will have improved. This is all a learning process for all of us, and I hope to age like wine rather than vinegar. I mean, just one last thing. I thought somebody was like going to deliberately break the streak, but I guess they didn't. I would just like to mention Mad Max. I did set that up in the Australian post-apocalyptic bit, and I guess I'm the biggest loser today.
I deliberately ignored it just to spite you, to be fair.
I deliberately ignored it, but not to spite you because I'm not as nasty as Jimmy.
Well, you're welcome back anytime. Jimmy, less so. Thank you very much for your time. And yeah, Jimmy, have fun editing this.
Thanks a lot, guys. See you soon.
Okay, guys, thanks a lot. Take care.
Ooh.
Thank you for listening to our first episode. Two Brats is created, recorded and edited by Jack Brindelli and Jimmy Rudiger. We'd like to give special thanks to Olivia Irons for allowing us to use her music, and to Khan Johnson for joining us. You can find more of their work on the links below. Thank you.